Welcome to Life Stories. What if doing the right thing cost you everything? Imagine working tirelessly for years, giving your heart to a job, to a community, only to be fired for a single act of kindness. That's exactly what happened to Jenna, a woman who thought she was just fixing a bike for a grieving child, only to lose her job, her stability, and almost her sense of self. But when an unexpected opportunity knocks, Jenna faces a choice that could change everything: her morals, her future, and the life of her daughter. Stay with us as we dive into a story of sacrifice, second chances, and the high price of doing what's right. But sometimes the right choice isn't always the one that's easiest. Let's find out where this journey takes her. Now let's take you back to the moment Jenna's world was turned upside down. Jenna Brooks sat in the dim light of her small, cluttered kitchen, her hands trembling as she folded the last of the bills into a neat stack. The apartment around her was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old pipes running through the walls. The kind of quiet that spoke volumes, a heavy silence that seemed to echo the constant pressure she felt in her chest. It had been 3 years since David's sudden death, 3 years since the world she knew shattered into a million pieces, leaving her to pick up the fragments while trying to hold her daughter, Emma, together. The hospital bills were long paid off, but the emotional toll of losing him had left deeper scars. The memory of him, his deep laugh, and the way he could fix anything with his hands still haunted her. Those hands had taught her how to fix bikes, his one true passion. And now, it was the only skill she had left to keep the bills paid and food on the table. But today, Jenna had done something she never thought she'd do. She'd given her heart to a child who had nothing left to give but the broken pieces of his father's memory. She'd spent her lunch break at CycleWorks fixing a bike for a 10-year-old named Noah. His father, a soldier deployed overseas, had left him that bike, a custom-made, limited edition Schwinn with personalized touches that made it one of a kind. A symbol of love, of pride, of something no money could buy. Noah's bike had been run over by a delivery truck. The boy was devastated, his eyes welling with tears as he explained how the bike was his last connection to his father. And Jenna, without thinking of the consequences, agreed to fix it. She knew the repairs would cost more than she could afford, money she didn't have. But something inside her broke at the sight of that bike, of that boy who had no one to help him. "I'll do it," she had promised, her voice breaking with the weight of her own grief. "I'll make it right." As the sun dipped behind the old brick buildings, Jenna had worked quietly in the back of CycleWorks, trying to stretch the few pennies she had left. She used her own money to buy the parts from a local shop, even though she knew it would mean another sleepless night. She spent hours after the shop closed, carefully rebuilding the bike, making sure the custom engravings were perfect, the frame straightened, and the tires balanced. It wasn't just a bike to her. It was a memory, a legacy of love, something she hadn't even realized she'd been longing for. By the time Noah came back to pick up his bike, it was almost midnight. His eyes lit up when he saw the restored Schwinn, the paint fresh and the handlebars shining under the fluorescent lights. "It looks better than before," he gasped, running his hand over the newly painted frame. "Wait till I show Dad." But then the door creaked open and Jenna froze. Greg Harper, her boss, stood in the doorway. His face was red, his eyes narrow with barely contained fury. "What the hell is going on here?" he barked, his voice laced with venom. Jenna stood up, wiping her hands on her apron, heart pounding in her chest. She had no time to explain before Greg cut her off. "I've told you 1,000 times, Brooks. No charity work. You're not here to fix broken bikes for free. You're here to do your job." "I paid for the parts myself," Jenna said, her voice steady despite the churning feeling in her stomach. "I did this after hours." "Not all of it," Greg sneered, pointing to the security footage screen. "I've seen it. You've been working on this during your lunch breaks, too. I've had enough. Get your things. You're done here." The room felt like it was closing in on her. Jenna's hands shook as she gathered her tools, her mind racing. She had been loyal to this shop for years. She'd never once complained about the pay, about being underappreciated, about the countless nights she'd spent working alone, fixing bikes when the world felt like it was falling apart. And now, this. Fired. For doing what felt like the right thing. As she turned to leave, the last thing she saw was Noah's confused face. His bike, her hard work, now tainted by the anger and rejection in the air. But just as she reached for the door, a man stepped forward from the small crowd of customers who had gathered at the counter, drawn by the commotion. His voice was calm, smooth like the kind of man who was used to getting what he wanted. "Excuse me," he said, catching Greg's attention. "I was hoping to get my bike chain looked at, and I noticed this woman's work just now. She's got a real touch with these machines." Greg hesitated for a moment, clearly torn, but then waved his hand dismissively. "Sorry, she's no longer employed here." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to Jenna. "Miss Brooks, is it?" he asked, offering her a business card. "I'm David Walker, CEO of Walker Enterprises. I've been looking for someone with your skills." Jenna stood there, caught off guard by the stranger's words. I don't need charity," she stammered. "This isn't charity," David said with a smile. "I'm offering you an opportunity. I've seen something in you, something not many people have. Let me take you for a ride." Jenna looked at Noah, still standing by the door, clutching his bike with uncertainty in his eyes. Her heart wavered, but David's unwavering gaze seemed to promise something more. "Think about it," he said, his voice low. "I'll give you a call in a few days." Jenna's mind was a whirlwind as she walked out of the shop. She had been fired for doing what she believed was right, but now, with David's card in her hand, the world seemed to shift in an entirely different direction. Was this the beginning of something new? Or had she just been swept up in another moment of false hope? Have you ever made a choice that changed everything, even though you knew it might cost you? What do you think Jenna will do next? Take a leap of faith or walk away from the unexpected offer? Jenna's fingers traced the edges of David's business card as the night swallowed her whole, the weight of her decision pressing down on her shoulders. Tomorrow, she would face a choice. And for the first time in years, she had no idea which path to take. Jenna sat on the worn sofa in her cramped apartment, staring at the business card David Walker had given her. The weight of it seemed to grow heavier with every passing second, pressing against her chest, suffocating her thoughts. The day had already been a whirlwind. Fired from a job she'd given everything to, a viral video about her act of kindness drawing unwanted attention, and now this unexpected offer from a man who seemed too polished, too confident. She glanced across the room at her daughter, Emma, who was playing quietly on the rug, her small hands carefully arranging a set of wooden blocks. The silence between them had become a regular companion, the kind that hung in the air like a fragile thread, easily snapped by the weight of unsaid words. Emma had always been quiet, but lately, Jenna noticed a sadness in her eyes. She missed David more than Jenna ever let on, though she tried to keep the facade up for her sake. Emma deserved a mother who had it all together, a mother who wasn't constantly battling her own doubts and fears. But how could she explain to her daughter that, for the first time in years, Jenna was more lost than ever? The knock on the door startled her, pulling her out of her thoughts. She stood up quickly, her heart racing as she moved toward the door. She opened it to find a tall man in a sharp suit, holding a small bouquet of flowers in his hand. It wasn't David Walker. This man had a completely different presence. His eyes, however, were just as penetrating, and his smile held something knowing. "Miss Brooks, I thought I'd come by to check in after our conversation yesterday," the man said, his voice calm, soothing even. "I understand this is a lot to take in, and I didn't want to leave you feeling uncertain." Jenna felt a wave of confusion wash over her. "I don't know if I'm ready to make any decisions yet," she stammered, clutching the doorframe. He stepped closer, his smile unwavering. "I understand, but I need to be honest with you, Jenna. This is an opportunity that doesn't come around every day. I know it's overwhelming, but I want to make sure you understand what's at stake. What's at stake for both you and Emma? Her breath hitched, her fingers tightening around the door. What are you saying? I've done my research, he continued, his gaze steady. And I know you're struggling. I also know how much you've sacrificed. But there's more to your story than what you've told me. You're capable of so much more, Jenna. I'm offering you the chance to run a business, yes, but I'm also offering you a chance to create something that will last. A legacy. His words, so carefully chosen, landed heavily in the space between them. Jenna opened her mouth to respond, but she couldn't find the right words. Could she really trust him? Could she trust anyone after everything that had happened? The idea of a new life, a chance to start fresh, tugged at her heart, but there was still something that didn't sit right. I appreciate the offer. Really, I do, Jenna said, taking a step back. But I need time to think. This is too much. I don't even know you. How can I make a decision like this? David Walker's expression didn't change. You don't need to know me, Jenna. You just need to trust yourself. And trust that the people who've come to offer you this opportunity aren't doing it for charity. We're doing it because we believe in what you can do. We've seen your work, your skill. It's unmatched. Jenna turned away from him, her mind racing. There was a part of her that wanted to believe him, to accept the offer, to take the leap and leave the past behind. But there was also a voice in the back of her head that whispered doubts, that reminded her of the risks, the potential for failure. What if she was setting herself up for another fall? What if she couldn't live up to the promise of something new? And then, as if on cue, the door opened a little further, and Emma's small voice floated from the hallway. Mom? Jenna's heart lurched in her chest, and she turned to see her daughter standing there, looking up at David Walker with wide, curious eyes. Mom, who's this? Emma asked, her voice soft but filled with innocence. David glanced down at the little girl, his expression softening. I'm David, he said, offering her a gentle smile. I've been talking to your mom about some exciting possibilities for her work. Emma stared at him for a moment, then tilted her head to one side. Are you going to help my mom fix bikes? Jenna felt a lump form in her throat. She had always been careful to shield Emma from the darker parts of their lives. But here, in this moment, her daughter had unknowingly cut through the layers of hesitation that had built up around her heart. Jenna crouched down to Emma's level, her hands shaking. I'm not sure yet, sweetie. We're still figuring it out. David Walker looked between the two of them, his expression unreadable. I think it's time for your mother to make a choice, don't you think? Jenna stood up, facing David with a mixture of anger and confusion bubbling beneath her skin. What do you mean by that? What are you really offering here? David's eyes narrowed, his voice low. You can have everything you've ever wanted, Jenna. Success, stability, a future for you and Emma, but it comes at a cost. Jenna felt her chest tighten as she took a step back. A cost? What kind of cost? David leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. Your soul. The words hit her like a slap, and for a moment everything went silent. She stood there, frozen, unable to move. Was this what she had been waiting for? Was this the price of her dreams? What would you do if you were in Jenna's position? Take the leap or walk away from the unknown? Jenna has come face to face with a decision that could change everything. Will she take the risk, or will her fear of the unknown hold her back? Jenna turned back to Emma, who was still watching her with wide eyes. She had no idea what lay ahead, no idea what David Walker truly meant. But she knew one thing for sure: her life, her future, and her daughter's future would never be the same again. As she closed the door softly, the weight of her decision hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. The next step was hers to take, but what would she choose? The decision to open the door to the unknown weighed heavily on Jenna, pressing down on her chest like 1,000 bricks. David Walker's words echoed in her mind as she walked through her apartment, trying to quiet the storm of doubt swirling inside her. The promise of success, of stability for her and Emma, was tempting, too tempting, but at what cost? Emma had already returned to her blocks, her little hands building towers with a focus Jenna rarely saw in her. The silence in the room was loud, deafening, as Jenna tried to gather her thoughts. She wasn't just fighting against her fears of failure anymore. No, this was something deeper, something rooted in the very core of who she was. The weight of David's words, "your soul," lingered in the air like smoke. Was that really the price she had to pay? She had always worked hard, always fought to provide for Emma. But this offer felt different. The thought of losing herself in the pursuit of success terrified her. Yet, how could she say no to something that promised to change everything for the better? The clock ticked on, and Jenna sat down at the kitchen table, her fingers tapping nervously against the surface. What was she supposed to do? She thought of David, her late husband, and how he would have handled this. He had always believed in doing the right thing, no matter the cost. But now, as the mother of Emma, she had to consider more than just what was right. She had to consider what was safe, what would protect her daughter. Jenna glanced back at Emma. The sight of her daughter's innocence, her unwavering trust in her mother, snapped Jenna out of her spiraling thoughts. The world wasn't just about the promises of money or success. It was about the people you love, the bonds you form, and the impact you leave behind. Emma was all that mattered. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Jenna made a decision. It wasn't an easy one, nor was it perfect, but it was hers. She would decline David's offer. She would continue to work on bikes to scrape by if she had to. The path ahead wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't easy. But she would hold on to the one thing that had always kept her grounded, her integrity. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in weeks, Jenna felt a sense of peace. She wasn't chasing after something that didn't belong to her. Instead, she was choosing to build her own future, brick by brick, bike repair by bike repair. The next morning, Jenna called David. "I've thought about your offer," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "And I've decided to turn it down. I appreciate everything you've done, but I'm not ready to give up who I am for success. I need to do this my way." David was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. "I understand, Jenna, but know this. You don't have to sacrifice who you are to achieve something great. If you ever change your mind, the offer still stands. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." The weight that had been on Jenna's shoulders lifted, but only slightly. The world hadn't suddenly become easier, nor had her struggles disappeared. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was making the right choice. The right choice for her, for Emma, and for the life she was determined to build on her own terms. Days turned into weeks, and life settled back into its familiar rhythm. Jenna continued fixing bikes, taking on odd jobs, and making every penny count. Emma had no idea the weight her mother had carried, the choices Jenna had made, but she was happy, and Jenna would do whatever it took to keep her that way. Then, one morning, a small package arrived at Jenna's door. She opened it to find a note and a set of tools. The note read, "For the next chapter, from someone who believes in you." Inside the package was a set of professional-grade tools and a letter from David Walker. It wasn't a job offer. It wasn't a handout. It was simply an acknowledgement of her strength, her refusal to compromise. It wasn't the fairy tale Jenna had imagined, but it was something far better: respect, recognition, and the knowledge that she had stayed true to herself. A month later, Jenna opened her own shop. It wasn't as big as the one David had proposed, and it wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She called it Jenna's Wheels, a place where kids could learn to fix bikes, where families could come for help without judgment, and where kindness mattered more than money. Emma was there with her, helping her set up, her small hands eager to get involved. The shop didn't have the sleek finishes of the big stores, but it had heart that Jenna had put into every bike she repaired, every lesson she taught, every life she touched. Jenna stood in the doorway of her new shop, looking out at the street. It was small, but it was hers. And for the first time in a long time, she was proud of the woman she had become. What do you think of Jenna's decision to stay true to herself? Do you think she made the right choice in the end? If you love this story, leave a 100 in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to share this story with your friends. Thanks for watching Life Stories.